Hi guys, I'm a 3-year veteran of EVE Online. For many people who join EVE Online and are confused with the 4 no-going back race choices, it can be a little daunting. So, which one's for you? Now, since Apocrypha, which if you're new won't mean anything to you, basically it's an expansion, EVE Online CCP who make EVE Online bring out expansion packs now and again, and they basically add new features, change the theme, make it all look pretty, update the graphics a bit, add more lag. We all love lag. Basically, since Apocrypha, the race you choose no longer has a significant effect on the skills that you're given. Because generally speaking, you're all given the same skills no matter what race you choose. However, there are some small skills which don't really take a lot of time, that are related to each race that you're given, so don't really worry about them. If you choose Amarr and want to train Minmatar, that's fine. You will just be behind somebody who chose Minmatar by maybe a day or so. So it's, in the terms of EVE, it's nothing to worry about. However, it's worth reading through this because it still completely applies for the ships. This is more often than not. There are the occasional freak ships, for example Amarr. Some of their ships use missiles, which traditionally is only for Caldari. But generally speaking, you want to just stick with lasers for Amarr. This is going to go through that. I'm going to go through the introductions now. I'm going to play them to you, just for, well, basically to make CCP feel good. Don't want to leave out their pretty videos, and it gives you a role-playing perspective on the races. However, a lot of people don't role-play. Don't be forced into it. If you don't want to do it, don't. Just PvP and blow everything to tiny pieces. I'm going to play them now.
Once a thriving tribal civilization, the Minmatar were enslaved by the Amarr Empire for hundreds of years. Most were freed after a great rebellion, but only at a tremendous cost. Today, the Minmatar Republic is a strong, resurgent nation, determined to win back the glory of its past. The Amarr Empire is the largest and oldest of the 4 empires. Ruled by a mighty empress, Amarr is a theocratic society capable of selfless acts and unspeakable evil, all in the name of their god. The Caldari state is a union of powerful mega-corporations governed by a strict meritocracy. The state is a fiercely competitive and ruthless society whose hyper-capitalistic ways have brought its people both misery and triumph. The only true democracy of New Eden, the Gallente Federation, is a powerful and prosperous multicultural dominion that welcomes outsiders with open arms. Intolerant of closed societies, the Gallente are fierce defenders of personal and social liberties.
Okay, so that was those. Now we're a little bit of a jargon buster. Keep these in mind. You probably know these, to be honest. Most of it's common sense. PvP, people say that was basically player versus player. PvE, player versus entity. That is non-player characters, anything you shoot basically that isn't a person. Warp Scrambler is basically just a module used to stop people running away. There are countermeasures to it, but won't go into that. Stasis Web of Fire is basically something that slows the enemy down. It jams their engine up a bit, slows them down, makes them easier to hit. Missioning, in a mission an objective's given. Once achieved, you get a reward in the form of money or expensive items. The objective, however, is usually guarded by rats. Ratting, the hunting of rats in asteroid belts. Again, I've said what ratting is. They're rats. No, I haven't. Yeah, missioning. They're guarded by rats. They are NPCs. PvE, basically ratting is. But they're in asteroid belts mainly. You can go to them to load the security system, the more dangerous that space generally is, and as a reward for that, for risking your arse being blown to smithereens by other players, the rats get more and more valuable, and you'll get bigger bounties on their heads. Anyway, down to business. Amarr. The Amarr Empire is the main choice for those who like to tank well in PvP. Their specialised armour tanks make them extremely hard to kill. Their primary weapons are lasers, which are some of EVE's best sniping tools. Lasers have very powerful raw, unskilled damage and can truly rip through enemy defences, really. However, lasers can only inflict 2 of the 4 damage types, that's EM and thermal, making them vulnerable to enemy-specific tanks. So if the enemy know you're coming in Amarr, they're gonna tank EM and thermal. You probably really won't stand a chance then, because you won't do any damage to them. They've got a sort of royalish ship look to them, sort of cool, really, shiny. The strengths are powerful raw damage, so they really do pack a punch. Quite good tracking against small ships. Quite long range. They have quite good long optimal range actually as well, and very, very strong tanks. The weaknesses are, of course, lasers require an extreme amount of capacitor, and the pilots must have very high energy skills to make sure that you don't cap out and run out of energy, at which point your lasers are useless, and if you can't fire your lasers, what good are you? You're just a sitting pinata in the middle of space. Moving on to Caldari State. They specialise in shield tanking and missile warfare. Although they have extremely powerful tanks, in PvP they must compromise tanking slots on your ship for tackle in order to hold the enemy in place, which makes their tank weaker for PvP. For this reason, when it comes to PvP, Caldari tend to have support roles. In missions they do not need warp scramblers or stasis weather fires, however, and their missiles have no optimal range, which makes Caldari State unrivaled really in PvE warfare. They're brilliant at killing rats. Missioning, if you're going to make money by missioning, Caldari is probably the way to go. As Caldari use missiles, they can do any damage types as well. They can do any of the 4 damage types. They can't combine them though, so if you want to do kinetic and thermal, you'll have to make half of your missile launchers do kinetic, half of them do thermal, because there's no missile that does kinetic and thermal damage. Each missile has its own specific damage type: pure thermal, pure kinetic, pure explosive, or pure EM. They've got sort of military, cool, sort of sinister-ish look to their ships. You'll know they're mostly grey, but they all look sort of military kind of style. The strengths, they have no optimal range, which is brilliant, because they've also got no fall off, which is a bit of a downfall. But their optimal range, I don't know what that is. Optimal range is usually so big that you shouldn't have to worry about fall off. If they go outside optimal range, then obviously the missile's just going to run out of fuel and you're not going to hit them, which is the downside. But the upside, again, huge optimal range. You don't have to worry about catching up with the enemy because you can hit them from here. Long range missiles, some very long range, we're talking over 100 kilometers. Extremely strong PvE tanks, as I've said, and they can do any damage type. Their weakness is they must compromise their tank in order to PvP, and missiles do have quite a slow rate of fire. The Gallente Federation. The Gallente Federation are the halfway mark in damage in tank, really, making them popular choice for PvP. The Federation have the most powerful drones in the game and a drone bay to match. Although their primary weapons are hybrid turrets and railguns, they can only do kinetic and thermal damage, which again is restricting like Amarr. They can only really 2 damage types. Their powerful drones make a fearsome cocktail, they really do, of damage types to hit any opponent where it hurts most. Gallente have a huge bonus on some of their ships for drones. Drones are your little helpers, basically. They fly around, they're like little mini ships. Say if you're a mothership, they're your little fighters. If the enemy's weakness is explosive, you can use explosive drones, and you can use bigger drones than normal ships of your class because you're Gallente, and your drones will do more damage because you're Gallente if you're in a Gallente drone boat. Gallente love the up close and dirty combat and have the most fearsome close range weapons in the game: blasters. which, when combined with a weather fire, warp scrambler, and heavy drones, i.e. we're talking battleships here, create basically a 10-kilometer bubble of death around the ship. If you enter it, you'll be extremely lucky to get out of it alive. This does, however, mean that they suffer from lack of medium range equipment. If you see a Gallente battleship, chances are, if you get within that 10-kilometer bubble of death, you're in serious trouble unless you know what you're doing. The ship style's sort of majestic, some sinister. They're the rivals of the Caldari state. Strengths, very powerful drones. They've got the bubble of death, as I've said, which I love saying because it's brilliant, and I'm Gallente and I've used it many times. Strong tank, quite a strong tank, not as strong as a Mars, but still a very, very reliable tank. Weaknesses, however, poor medium range capability and the short range. The long range, sometimes good, sometimes not. It's a bit of an iffy one, that. And finally, the Minmatar Republic are possibly the best 1v1 PvPers for some reasons I'll explain now. Their weapons require no capacitor to fire. Your capacitor is your life when you're in ship. It has no effect on your HP, however it is your energy. It's your nuclear power plant sitting in the middle of your ship. You run out of power, you can't run anything, and then it's just a matter of time until you're dead. So can use energy warfare to bleed enemy capacitors dry. They can sacrifice their own capacitor because they don't need it in order to dry out the enemies using electronic warfare and energy warfare. Energy warfare is probably a better term for it. With no capacitor, the enemy can't run their tank, and you've just turned a great big ship into a paper pinata. So Minmatar's quite good at that. Minmatar use projectile turrets and missiles, allowing for any damage type. They can also tank armor or shield. However, their tanks are not as strong as their specialist counterparts over in the Empire or the Caldari state. The Republic socialise in speed and surprise to win the fight. That's important. Lose either one and you could be in for a very bad day. They don't tank very well, Minmatar. They sometimes use shields, sometimes use armour. They aren't particularly brilliant at either, but they use speed. If you can't hit me, I don't need to tank. That's their general idea. However, if you lose the element of surprise, as I've said, you just got webified, scrambled, you're screwed, you're a sitting duck, and they're going to cut through you like butter. Really good guerrilla warfare. Just make sure the enemy run out of capacitor. The ship style is sort of like an industrial, rough, rushed together ships. They look sort of cool if you're into the whole I like looking at rust thing. They're made out of metal scraps. That's for the veterans. Strengths: fast and agile ships, really hard to catch. Long-range missiles, again, same as Caldari, they use missiles. They can do any damage type. They use projectile ammunitions, which is basically like modern day artillery shells, except they've got explosive warheads. You've got heat, high explosive anti-tanks, kinetics, and you've got electromagnetic bursts on impact. So they use the same sort of technology that we use now. Weaknesses, however, may need to compromise their tank in PvP for speed. Missiles have a slow rate of fire, as is always the case with missiles, really, unless you get into some of the specific ships. Now, once you get to an advanced level, you can reap the benefits of any race, to be honest, by training another race's skills other than that you chose in the character creation process. However, at that level, you probably won't find anything new in this little tutorial, so this is just for new players, really. Once you get to the point where you are happy with your skills, with the race you've chosen, to be honest, you'll probably know everything I've just said anyway. So you're probably just listening to this just to hear my squeaky chair and my strange voice. Now, YouTube only allows 15 minutes of recording, so I'm going to have to make a second video about character selection. Feel free, I'll put a link in the description to have a look at if you're wondering about that.